Hello and a warm Collisions YYC welcome to episode 400. Thank you to our audience, our past guests, and our sponsorship partners for supporting the growth of the show. This started as a passion project from the corner of my desk at the end of 2019 and has grown into the show it is today. Now at 400 episodes and over 100,000 downloads, we have seen nothing but increased interest in the conversations we are having with our community. I applaud every single one of you for always starving to learn more about the people and the businesses that are changing the Western Canadian landscape. Stay tuned for some exciting announcements coming early in 2024. Thank you. We could not have done it without you. Hello and a warm Collisions, episode 400. Warm welcome to my guest, Mr. Jay McNeil. How you doing, Jay?
I'm doing really good, thanks.
Oh man, thanks for coming on. When everybody knows, I started this podcast because I'm incredibly bullish on things that happen in Calgary, Alberta, Western Canada. Started off as, oh, this will be fun. Boom, fast forward 400 episodes later, and I love for these 100 episode milestones to have someone on or have guests on that really represents the grassroots of why I started this, of what's going on in the Calgary community. So a good friend of mine, Colleen Pound, suggested, hey, why not you talk to Jay? He is the Vice President of Business Operations at the Calgary Stampeder Football Club. So not that anything needs any introduction. If you're in Calgary, you know about the Stampeder Football Club. But Jay, tell us a little bit, how long you've been in this role, tell us about it. And you come from the business background. So I've got many questions for you today about how this kind of comes together. So I'll turn the mic over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. First of all, I feel very fortunate that you considered having me on for the 400th episode. So thank you. And it's, and on behalf of the Stampeders as well, we're excited about this. So, yeah. So in this particular role, I've been with the team for a little over a year. So I started in October of 2022, and I had played for the team from 1994 to 2007. So,
nice. Very cool.
Yeah, you bet. And so, throughout the last 6 years of my football career, I worked in Calgary in oil and gas, and I continued, in that industry up until October of last year. So I started out in sales, and then my last role was chief operating officer for a publicly traded service company.
Very cool. And since time in the clean tech space, and of course, I'm creeping on your LinkedIn like any good interviewer, professional creepers that we are.
As you should.
So just curious a little bit, the little boy in me, was this a dream to kind of come full circle and come back here? Did it just the stars align? And talk a little bit about the role that Stampeders even represent for you, but also in our city.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the answer, the short answer to that is no. This was never really even a thought, and it started with a random conversation about an alumni. Not a function, but sort of something we had going on with the alumni as well as with the team, and then a conversation just led us down the road. And I went from that meeting to a meeting with John Huffnagel, our president, and then from that meeting a week later, I was with John Bean, the CEO of Calgary Sports and Entertainment. That was a Friday afternoon. I had a job offer on Monday. So
sounds like a slippery slope, Jay.
Right, exactly. So now that it has happened, and I've been in it for a year, and it really is a second dream come true. This team I'm passionate about, awesome. This game that I'm passionate about, and then this league I'm passionate about. So I feel incredibly fortunate to be where I'm at, and really excited about where we're going. That being said, the last year has been the most stressful, the biggest time commitment and the most challenging year of my career. But it's also been the best year of my career.
I love it. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger, and all the other metaphors that go iron sharpens iron.
Exactly.
So what the stressfulness? Like, it's so easy to look at it as a fan, as someone who goes to games and go, oh yeah, it's great. It's a sports team. I love it. It must be so cool and sexy behind the scenes. But this is also a business. This is hard work. Every business goes through cycles of tough times. Tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes of coming from the background of being a player, being a business guy of sales, chief operations, now coming into this, probably with the understanding of what it is to be on the field, but also like this is a business and it's got to work, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, while I was playing, I was a player for the team. Then I went on to be vice president of the Players Association for 8 years after I retired. So I did get a glimpse into the business of sports.
Okay.
But not quite to the extent, obviously you don't see the details of the financial statements of each club and how that works. But the challenging piece to this is, since COVID, the CFL has been struggling attendance-wise. People found other things to do. The business of sports has changed in terms of how fans consume sports, and so we're trying to catch up from that. But the reality is for the Stampeders and I'll say as for the Elks as well, is we've been losing season ticket holders since 2015. No surprise, the price of oil drops in 2014, and as companies, make cuts to their budgets, and people, unfortunately, there was a lot of people that were looking for work throughout that time. They left as season ticket holders and found other things to do, and and then that was expedited, through the pandemic. And so the reality is we lost 35% of our season ticket holders since 2015.
Ouch.
So trying to
is that the backbone
reconnect with fans.
Is season ticket holders, is that the make or break? Is that the count on? That's what smooths out the cash flow. If we want to just speak of it in business terms, is that kind of the make or break? Is the season ticket holders?
Our largest revenue line is season tickets.
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. Now, there's obviously TV that comes in through the league level that gets distributed to all the teams, but our number one revenue line continues to be ticket sales.
So 35% hit to your largest revenue line. That every business can understand what that means. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And what was interesting is, we had led the league in attendance and led the league in season tickets. We're also very good on the field. And so, as the sporting industry was changing, there really wasn't a whole impetus for us to change because things were going well. And yet we'd seen a slight decline up until the pandemic, and then it just dropped off at that point. And that's where things really changed with the accessibility of everything being online and enhanced on TV viewing. So we really have had to change the way in which we think about our business and how we attract fans and how we sell tickets and all those sorts of things.
I appreciate what you said. If I just want to pull the thread of the honesty of there, things were shifting, but we didn't have a huge impetus to change because it was kind of working for us. And I think any business leader can relate. Go, well, yeah, I can see some trends, but let's not shake the bed too much, or it's going to work, or let's not mix it up. But then all of a sudden, COVID, the left hook that everybody got in one way or another during COVID. So talk to me, just overarching, like the role. So many businesses strive now to be seen as, well, we're part of the community and we are doing good and we are participating. And I think in the sports world, that just gets baked into it, which I'm assuming can add a whole kinds of other layers of complexity of like, well, this has to be a viable business, but we're this huge part of the community that sits in people's hearts and that there's some fire there too, right? If you change too much, you're going to get some hate mail.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And our season ticket holders, our fans are very vocal nice. about what they don't like, as they should. And so we've hired Mount Royal to do surveys, with season ticket holders who have left and asked them why. And we've learned some valuable things that way and made some adjustments as an organization to try to overcome those obstacles. But as we re-engage with the community, whether it's with businesses, whether it's with individual season ticket holders, whether it's just single game buyers, the thing that we really try to stress is, and if I can sum it up in one sentence, is why would somebody want to support the Calgary Stampeders? It's because we make Calgary a better city. And it's everything we do, from a social responsibility piece, from our players to the organization to our foundation and how we support the community. And when we talk with people about what we do in the community, our players, they're going to exceed 250 appearances this year. We work with over 50 different charitable organizations in any given year, and we've got plans to build that out. So, we want to see over 300 appearances by our players, and we want to, get up to 75 organizations that we work with. And so, time, resources, and dollars through our foundation. We leave a big impact in our city, and if for something bad were to happen to this organization, we'd leave a hole in it. And when we tell people this and we talk about the details of it, there isn't one person that disagrees with us, and we do connect on that emotional level.
Is there a through line for the average fan? I'm not trying to define what an average fan is, but the average individual who loves going to the game. I love the experience. I bundle up. I do whatever I do to go there and have it sit beside the same people I've sat beside for years because they also have seasons. Is there a through line, or is there a clear enough line of sight to what you just said? Or is that also part of the messaging of like, hey, by the way, this is not just a fun place to come on game day or to get bought in and get the family around the TV, to your point, that this organization actually has impact on our city? Or is I feel that story still has some bandwidth to be told. That's my own thoughts.
I would agree with you.
Mm,
There isn't. I don't pass up an opportunity to go out and speak on behalf of the
thanks.
organization, if it's one person or if it's 1,000 people, because it's important for us to get that message out. And we do. One of the things that I love about sports and about, in particular, the Calgary Stampeders is we bring the community together. In a whole bunch of different ways, and the impact that we have as a computer. I recognize that as a player. Early on in my career, my first off season, when I stayed in Calgary, I did every charity appearance that I could do, whether it was skiing, playing basketball, signing autographs, going to school and reading. I did everything I possibly could, and you really learn how valuable this organization is to the community and how important it is to give back. We're asking them to support us, and we want to make sure that we support the community that supports us.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I was excited to have you on because I'm like, this has so many threads in it. And yeah, it is a business and it goes through challenges. But you're right. Remove that, the fear of losing that from a community. Like it plays such a role that it's maybe easy to just take it for granted if you live here, to be blunt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
from the time I retired to the time I came back in this position, there were times when I took it for granted. Even as an alumni, you still try to go out and do appearances for the club and on behalf of the alumni. But yeah, no, there is. That's unfortunately that's just the
You just
reality of the
trust that
world.
it's always going to be there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to me a little bit about getting back to the business. You've got a facility that's maybe aging a little bit. I think I heard someone mention that today, whether it was in the media or wherever, like, oh, we need a new such and such. And these are big numbers. These are big dollars. These are like, you're thinking things on a large time horizon when you talk about building a new facility. And we've got a lot of rhetoric around that in Calgary from a hockey perspective to maybe football
Yep.
to, like you said, just getting people's preferences have changed in how they consume content, whether it's in person or whether it's just on my phone as we sit here today.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things like obviously there's things you can do now, things you can do later. When you look at the business model, is it about how do we adapt to the changing fan while simultaneously also being current and looking at things like a new facility? I'm not trying to put you on the spot with that question, but it's got to come up, and it's no easy. That's not an easy box to check on the corporate strategy list.
No, and it's certainly something that comes up,
Hmm.
with every fan you talk to. And yes, we are challenged with the McMahon Stadium. We've got the oldest stadium in the CFL. It's a challenge. One of the things I attempted to do since I started is to talk about the historical aspect of the CFL. And so I've been telling everybody that will listen and say, we've got the Fenway Park of the CFL. Um, yeah,
Now,
it's
I like
she's
a good storyline. I like a good. I like that, Jay. I like it.
yeah.
This is like
Some
that. Oh, I
people.
never thought of it that way. Well, you should. You should. I like that. I like that.
Well, there is a lot of history here, and you think about some of the great players that have come and played here. Whether it's Doug Flutie, whether it's Willie Burton, whether it's John Helton. Right? So and then all the great cups we had won, and the great teams that we have had. Uh, when you're sitting in that bowl on a summer night, those sight lines are the best in the CFL. There's not a better atmosphere when this stadium is full. Yes, we have challenges on the concourse, with our facilities. And I'll be honest, I don't love having porta potties within the stadium. We need
the
we need to fix
lineups in
that.
the bathroom are a real thing. Thank you for being honest
They
about that.
are
I haven't
they
been to a
are a
game for a
real
few
thing.
years, but that does stick out in my mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely, as it should.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, we would love, and we are attempting to have discussions around a new stadium. Will we ever get there? I don't know.
That's a long
Yeah,
horizon
that's
question.
a long way away. So in the meantime, we have to do with the best with what we've got, and we do have plans, and we do strategize about, because younger fans consume sports very differently than somebody my age does.
Yeah.
They don't want to sit in a seat for 3 hours and watch it. They consume it in short bits. Like whether it's on their phone. They want to have a social spot where they can go hang out with friends and have a game going on in the background.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you
As
know,
almost as a backdrop, not necessarily. Yeah, that's a really good point. Mhm.
yeah.
So
And
for
you
that,
talk about
does that mean shifting and looking at your relationship? You mentioned about TV and media, and just thinking about the whole, where bums and seats isn't the main metric anymore, to your point, or it's just one of the important metrics.
one of the more important metrics. You're exactly right. So it's even things like Instagrammable moments. These are things we have to consider as a business, and how do we take an older stadium and create Instagrammable moments for young kids to come, and
Mm,
you want to feel welcome here. So these are things that we strategize about every day, and look for cost-effective ways in which it's hard when your season ticket base has been depleted by 35% to say, hey,
Yeah.
we've got a ton of extra cash available that we can invest in this. So we are going to be very prudent in how we do this.
The times when you're forced to make the most aggressive changes is often when you're back on the heels from a cash perspective as a business.
Right.
Because back
Isn't
to your
that
point,
funny?
when things are going well, don't rock the boat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you seen, and being blunt with it, has that drop, that 35% drop, has it bottomed out? Have you arrested the fall and while we're starting to move in the other direction, or has it stabilized? Just to be really straight up with that question.
I would, so we saw a small drop, the smallest percentage in season ticket holders, in the last 5 years in this past year, but we made up for it single game tickets. So
okay.
overall,
so people are still going like, oh, let's go today, like day of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the other piece that's changed too. When you think about the secondary ticket market, whether it's, the StubHubs or the SeatGeeks, that purchase tickets, and you can, wait and see what the weather is going to look like and buy a ticket an hour before the game. And so the accessibility of tickets is a lot easier and a lot more convenient, and you can do it quite quickly. And so that's changed the game a little bit too. And so, to see an erosion of our season ticket base, a little bit, yeah, you can understand because of that secondary market. To see what we've had, there's a bigger, more fundamental problem that we've got to fix.
And just thinking about the revenue numbers, I'm assuming from a dollars per ticket, that individual who buys it on the day of is paying a little bit more of a premium than maybe a season ticket holder. But from a business, one is really bumpy cash flow from a cash flow perspective. The other one, you can plan for it. So they both have their plus and minuses, slightly bigger margins, but very unpredictable.
Very, very unpredictable.
Those are higher risk dollars. Those are risky because I don't know. What if it rains that day?
Well, and that's what I was just about to say is, we felt that in particular this year. Mother Nature was not kind to us this year.
Yeah. Okay.
So whether it was our preseason game that almost got canceled because of smoke, we had a game in July that was 35 degrees and too hot to sit in the stands. In August, we had August, I think 18th, we had snow, or it was 6 degrees and rain and wind.
Oh, Calgary, Calgary, you fickle lady, you with your weather, with your weather.
We were celebrating our 98. It was the 25th anniversary of our 98 Grey Cup team. And so we brought over 35 players back for that game. And, we had done our South practice field. We had an event planned before the game, and nobody was there. Our players didn't even want to stick around because it was so cold. And then
taking me back to my youth playing football games in the snow and the wet in Montreal, and your feet are frozen. And that's something you like to grow out of,
Right, exactly.
But weather and the big swings in weather, which is a Calgary phenomenon, it's got to wreak havoc on just something you've literally. It's like being a farmer. You're always checking the weather.
You're always checking the weather. When it's game week, I am checking the weather by the hour. Forecast changed.
Yeah. Well, so is your attendees at the same thing. Like, what do I wear? Do I wear a Parker, or what do I? When you look at some of the other clubs across Canada, is it fairly similar? Because this is a consistent, this is Calgary, Western Canada based podcast, and I'm always very pro Alberta. Are we doing better than other markets? Are other markets just as challenged? Like, there is the phenomenon of how the sports market have changed. What happened to us with the downturn of oil was very Alberta, very Calgary centric, and a little bit back in 14 or so. I'm assuming you all compare notes. How's the trends? Is it pretty consistent across the board, or is there pockets of difference?
No, things that are quite different actually across the CFL. So when you look at Calgary, despite our losses, we still sit fourth in the league in ticket sales. So that's it's still respectable.
Who's beating us, Jay? Who's beating us? Uh-huh.
Well, Winnipeg has done a phenomenal job of managing their business. They understand it from top to bottom and have made changes. And talking with their president, it says it's taken them 10 years to get there since he took over in that role. But they are leading the league. Saskatchewan, despite they've seen a decrease for the first time ever, they've had to hire a sales team because people were just
and everyone knows Saskatchewan fans are at another level, right? That's a whole nother thing.
And they really are. But and then when you've seen the largest increases in our major markets, Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, they have year over year shown, double-digit growth in their ticket sales. They were trailing the rest of the league, but their ownership groups have really energized those markets, and you've seen a lot of
they've got a bigger, so they have a bigger pool, like they just have more people, right? Like just the brass tacks of that.
Yep. So I think it's really exciting about what's happening in the league. You can see our TV, our broadcast ratings are up across the board. In that 25 to 50 category, which is the main demographic, what TSN looks for. It's up, close to over 30% year over year. In Calgary, our viewer broadcast in that same demographic is up, over 40. So, there's a lot. So
you still have the fans; they're just consuming in a very, very different way. Exactly what you said earlier.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is a much better problem than just losing interest.
Right. Apathy or finding something else to do.
Well, and we all have so much access to content. It's insane. Like used to be, if it wasn't on or televised in your local market, that you didn't get to see the World Cup, or you didn't get whatever you want to see, you can now digest it. So it's just the competitive for eyeballs is real.
It is very real. And, when you think about, the weather challenges we've had this year, and somebody sitting at home that has the opportunity to buy a ticket an hour before the game, but their 50-inch TV is
and the snacks and the beer is cold. It's tough, man. It's a tough competition.
Yeah, it really is. And so, that leads us into, something completely different as we talk about what do we do from a game presentation standpoint? Right. How do we compel fans to come to the stadium because there's something happening here that you can't see on TV? Right. And that's the other part of our business that we strategize every day. And how can we elevate the fan experience on game day?
Well, I know we will go out of our way for an experience, but if the experience on the couch is just easier, more comfortable, and just having a lazy day. But if there's something like you'll go out of your way for a draw, but it has to be a draw now because it's easy to go, nah, I'm just going to stay home. And COVID didn't help teach us that either. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So what can you change? What can't you change? How do you make it without compromising that there is an integrity to this is the game we play and this is how we play it as well? Like, because you get too gimmicky and then you get some backlash, I would imagine.
Yep. Totally.
Instantaneously.
Yeah, no, it instantaneously, right? So I think the core of the game of football and that aspect will always be there. Especially the Canadian game, right? It's something that distinguishes ourselves from the NFL, from college football in the U.S., and people are quite proud of the heritage of the Canadian Football League. So that will always be what it is.
And for the audience, we're recording this on Thanksgiving Friday in the U.S. Speaking of like football on top of football,
like point.
Yeah, I talked to some guys like, I think I'm just going to skip out today, go home and watch football. So yeah, that's just for just good timing on the day that we're recording this episode. Right. Actually, I don't think the games have started yet, but probably I'm sure I could find one somewhere if I turned on my TV.
Yep. And so the thing is, what we talk about is so that you got the game, and there's lots of things you can do within the game on commercial breaks, on at the end of each quarter and those sorts of things. But if you get too gimmicky, like you said, you'll hear about it. Yeah. But it's what goes on before the game, and what can you do after the game to give people an experience, an end-to-end experience. Whether it's tailgating, we've got the best tailgating in the league. And
how do you gauge that? What's your metric for best? Because I love best tailgating. I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, wait a second. How do you measure best tailgating? I might be putting you on the spot. What's the metric on that, Jay?
Well, this would be completely anecdotal.
Okay, amazing. I'm okay with that.
But it is when you look at there are half the stadiums just don't have any tailgating
space and availability.
Space and availability. So and then the rest that do. It is very limited. They don't have the parking space, as close to the stadium like we do. And so there's something special when you drive up on game day and you just see tents and people out barbecuing. And
I saw that recently for the first time in a while. And I was like, wow, like it just looked like you wanted to just kind of wheel in because it looked like a good time. And the parking lot was packed and there was all kinds of contraptions and barbecue. Like I'm funny. I had that experience driving by. So I wanted to pry on that.
Good.
Because my wife and I are both like, wow, like that looks like a whole scene going on there. it looked like a good time, man. It did. No question.
The only challenge I have with it, I love it because it adds such an atmosphere. Like if you're coming from the C train and you're walking across the bridge across Crowchild Trail,
well, you look down on it, right? Yeah, you see it.
It's fantastic. My challenge with it is people are having so much fun that to get them into the stadium on time for kickoff is hard.
Yeah,
I would say by the end of the first quarter is when people are there. So but that's something we talk about from game presentation. What can we do prior to just before kickoff
to create a little
to
FOMO.
Compel people? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we strategize about that, which is kind of fun because you can dream up and try to do some special things.
Well, and you've got a real live kind of petri dish to test it in. Well, we'll try it on this
Yeah,
game and see what happens, and if it
yeah,
works, we'll
exactly.
continue. And what's the balance between, back to the business side, back to season tickets? Just thinking about the world of hockey and corporate versus individual, like families buying season tickets versus companies. You talked about obviously the downturn, but that affected companies and individuals, affected us all.
Yep.
If you lived in Alberta, you were rare that you weren't affected during that time. Is there a balance, or like I know certainly with hockey, tons of season ticket holders and boxes, all funded by corporate dollars, which is a
Yep.
different dollar to spend as an individual, where you're dealing with after tax dollars versus before. Is that as true for you guys the same way in terms of the corporate involvement versus the families?
Yep. I would say that if you, and again, this is, I don't have the data in front of me, but this would just be I'd be making a guess on this,
Okay.
that the majority of our, call it season ticket holders, people that are coming to the games would be individuals, families, buddies that get together and buy tickets together.
Okay.
We do have, the the corporations that do support us are they are so loyal, and they are so good to us, and we're so appreciative of it. I think because of COVID, and those people that had left us, we are really trying to re-engage them again,
Yeah, I bet.
and talk about, and you get a comment like, well, we didn't use our tickets, and well, we can help you with that. Whether you want to donate them to kids up
Nice.
front, and have underprivileged people come, and we can do
Give an
that. You
oppor-
get a tax
give opportunities. Yeah, I like that.
Yep, you get a tax receipt for it. We allow you to exchange the tickets. You're not going to be at a game, and you want to double up for another game. We'll allow you to do that. And then if you missed a game completely, all the unused tickets we allow you to exchange them toward the end of the season. So there's lots of opportunity to make
Oh,
up
nice.
for
Okay,
that.
so you
Yeah,
remove some of the risk for that from that perspective.
yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, I was kind of curious because certainly, obviously, from NHL perspective, it's just the level of business involvement and how many times you get an invite. Like, oh, we've just got a box, we got tickets, we need to fill it up. Like, it's just it seems like a different type of commodity as it gets flown.
No,
As it gets, yeah,
and let's face it, there is a different price level. You can get a season ticket for as low as $170 a seat in McMahon Stadium.
mm-hmm.
And the most is a little over $1,000. Where you know yeah, at the Saddle Dome, and not it's just a different. It's just that we're
It
playing on
is.
two different playgrounds here, and there's some it's just not on the same level. So it is
Yeah,
affordable
understand.
for
Yeah.
families to
Which
and we got
probably why
price
it makes
points in
more
there.
sense for families to do that. It's just you're right.
Yep.
It's just a different thing, and just to appreciate. But when I think of the city as a whole, and I think of the role that sports plays, there's different opportunities, and each there's different roles to be played too, right? Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yep. Exactly. And so we are very focused on re-engaging our Calgary fans on a number of fronts. Corporate specifically is one area that we are working really hard on.
Yeah, which would make sense to me for sure. Kind of the idea of losing an organization like this, and not that we're talking that's not happening, so we're not talking about that, but
Nope.
just thinking, has there been other markets? Like, I'm just trying to think in my head, and I'm not a historian in this way, but is there other markets across Canada that have lost their team? Like, because it does happen. Like, it is. I don't want to like, oh, that could never happen. It does happen, and you hear the stories
Yep.
of it. Is there a Canadian example of where that's happened, and just some of the impact that's been? I like to sell a little bit of fear on this, folks. Like, I want people to get rallied up and come and buy some tickets from you.
Well, in Montreal and Ottawa are two good examples. They've
Mhm.
had you know multiple organizations sort of
Come and
throughout.
go.
Whether it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
the Ottawa Rough Riders, then the Ottawa Renegades, now the Ottawa Red Blacks. Then you had the Montreal Alouettes, the Montreal Concord,
right.
and then after the U.S. expansion failed, Baltimore moved back to Montreal, and they've been there ever since.
That's right.
But they've had some ownership challenges over the last couple of years, and fortunately now have really really solid ownership in there. And so it has happened,
That's
and
right.
as
Yeah,
resilient.
Montreal's. I grew up in Quebec, and I'm like, yeah, thinking back, that
Yeah,
was kind of like a revolving door. It felt like there for a bit.
right.
Yeah,
One thing about this league and the franchises within the league, it's very resilient. All the league in itself. There was been through some tough times. As a player, I was there. When they've asked every player to take a pay cut to help, save the league. When you saw the U.S. franchises go away, and so somehow, some way, this league always continues to chug along and find a way. And I'm confident. It's going to take a lot of hard work to get to where we want to go, but I'm confident we're going to get there.
I appreciate your optimism, and I just want to touch on like I've been told it's not it's necessarily a high paying league from a player perspective. I'm like, You're asking these poor guys to take a pay cut. Ouch.
Fortunately, that hasn't happened in a
Okay,
long time.
good. Because I've heard, no, it's not the NFL, folks. Like, you know what I mean? Let's be clear. It's the CFL. There is a different pay structure, and we won't even we'll get into that. Do majority, and now I'm just getting into the nuts and bolts of it, but where are the majority, like if I look at the team right now, if I was going to break it down, where are the majority of the players from?
It's about 50-50.
Okay.
When you take away our quarterbacks can be of any nationality. And then when you take away the quarterbacks, generally those, there are the occasion that we do have Canadian quarterbacks, but generally they're American players. When you take that out, it is about 50-50.
Okay. And so is the CFL, you, I guess, actively down there recruiting kind of that between college and NFL? Like where do you go to find those players? Like obviously that's a full-time job in itself, right?
Absolutely. Every team has a U.S. scouting department. Their GMs are very versed and connected, within the college community and within the NFL as well. And so we do, we hold camps, throughout the off season where, players can just come and work out for our coaches. We can evaluate them and then decide whether or not we want to bring them to training camp in the fall. And admittedly, it's gotten tougher, with the USFL and with the XFL. It's made that pool smaller.
Okay.
And we've got to work around that too.
Every business is competing for talent, right? No matter where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Interesting. I think I just saw, I don't know if you saw, it was the Joe Rogan interview with The Rock when he was telling the story about turning down the offer to come back and play in Calgary. I don't know. I just caught it on Instagram. Of course, I heard Calgary, and I'm like, you're not expecting to hear the word Calgary, talking about when he decided to make the jump, and I'm not going to pursue football anymore. It's just funny that it was and I've heard the story about him in Calgary before. I just saw it literally yesterday, so it popped the top of my mind of him. Like that was his turning point. Oh, were you?
I was
at that
with
time?
the team when he was here. Yeah. So that was my second year, and he was a rookie, and I would say he was one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Really enjoyed talking to him. So it's pretty cool.
I had friends that are like, yeah, he came over for dinner one time when I knew a bunch of players. And it's funny that, someone becomes famous. Everyone comes out of the woodwork. Oh, I knew that guy. But it's funny him telling the story about when he finally said, I'm going to stop pursuing. And I think then he went to WWE or WWF or whatever it was at the time, but stop pursuing football as a career. And it was Calgary was the turning point. Just made me laugh. Small world here. It's a small world we live in. It's all connected. So obviously you've been with the organization for a year now. What gets you the most excited about the future? You're doing a lot of initiatives, but is there a couple, not a top 3 list, but what gets you the most excited? And obviously you're there to create change. I can hear it in your voice. I can hear the energy. When you think about a couple of years from now, what are the things we're going to start seeing as fans and as just members of the Calgary community ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the things we started this year, and it kind of, we were intentional about it, but it kind of got bigger than we had anticipated that it would. And that was connecting with new Canadians. And, in particular, the South Asian community, through some of our corporate presentations in the off season, we were connected with a couple, with some leaders of a nonprofit in Northeast Calgary that focused on at-risk youth in Northeast Calgary. And, we talked about, how can we partner together? And then we did a Heritage Night Market on August 4th. And we had 6 different multicultural groups be a part of that. We had Azure Bizanis. We had 200 people from Ukraine come to the game, and they held the flags during the national anthem. We had a Chinese group, two Punjabi groups. Anyways, and
nice.
Through that, we also connected with some political leaders from the Northeast and some other, business leaders in the Northeast, and it's really started to snowball a little bit. And so we're going to put together a mentorship program throughout the off season for these at-risk youth, and then develop a flag football league for Northeast Calgary, because traditionally, basketball is a big sport for them. Cricket's a big sport for them, and it's in learning, as I'm starting to learn, from this group, is not necessarily that football is not something they're interested. It's a complicated, violent sport, and and they want to learn about it.
And depending what part of the world they're from, they just weren't introduced to it. Football meant something different to them. It was a different sport, you might want to argue. And so, and see, those are the things that I love that you're sharing, because I go to a game or I don't, and my relationship or understanding of the role that this team plays and this organization plays in the city, it can easily stop there unless I hear these kind of stories.
Right. And what gets me excited about this is, you talk about, right now, 25% of Calgary's population are new Canadians. In 20 years, that's going to be 50%. And, we talk about bringing, the community together. That's all Calgarians. We want everybody to feel like this is their team. The Stampeders are their team. And this McMahon Stadium, or hopefully a new stadium in the
Yeah,
future, is a
totally.
place where they feel safe.
I'll coach you on that 5 years from now when we have when we have a follow up chat.
Right, exactly. And where people feel safe and want to come to. And so, what really drove this home for me is we had a gentleman from Kids Play Calgary. That's one of the organizations we're working with in the Northeast, and he was instrumental in helping us connect with other different groups within the community. And so we asked him to do the coin toss for our game at our Heritage Night, and it was a thank you for helping us. He's a football guy. He's a Punjabi descent, but he's a football guy, and he teared up, and and he was like, I can't tell you how much this means to me. And I said, well, hey, it's a small thank you for what you've done. And he goes, you're showing our community that we're welcome here, and this is
I love that.
and that hit home. I was taken back by that. I wasn't expecting that reaction, and so it helps you understand a little bit about how people feel and how we can try to connect in the future. So
Just helping people feel like it's so subtle, it's so small, and back to like we joke, take things for granted. Feeling welcome, feeling like you're a part of a community, and especially, I remember even just moving to Calgary in 2000 from Montreal, and it took me about 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, I'm actually kind of from here now, and I wasn't dealing with challenges of coming from a completely different. Well, maybe Montreal is a completely different culture. That's a bigger conversation. That's a bigger conversation, but you take it for granted, and I say, oh, Calgary's so inclusive. And people are like, well, yeah, but once you're in it, if you're from the outside, it can feel as exclusionary as anywhere else because you don't feel like you're part of it. And that's sometimes just
right.
real or not, if that's what you feel, making people feel like they're part of something. And you're right. We've got net new migration coming in. We've got a city that's got a different look than it had. And I think that's amazing as we start to grow. But if we don't have people feel included, we'll lose some of what I think makes Calgary special. That's my to be blunt.
I completely agree. Yeah, and that's I love Calgary. It's a big city that has big city amenities, but feels like a small town because everybody seems to know
Like a
everybody
small
and
town
everybody's
ever. I
connected.
totally agree with you. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah, and I love that. But if people are not don't feel a part of that, then that's a challenge. It's something
Well, then
we've got to help bridge that gap.
then you look back and go, oh, remember the good old days. I don't want to be like,
Yeah,
I'm too young to say that. I wanted the good old days, like to maybe like we're still the best is yet to come. But as we grow, you're right. We have to be more deliberate on it, or some of those things can slip away pretty quickly.
exactly.
And so hence why when I was like, who do I have on for episode 400? I'm like, what a great conversation to have with, you and I having not met before, but having mutual friends back to 1 degree of separation who
Exactly.
connected us. But, knowing of this football club, driving by it all the time, but really understanding a deeper level of the role it plays in the city. And clearly you're aspiring to play an even bigger role. So kudos to you on that journey for sure.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, it's we are very focused as an organization and how we can do that. So
And I'm assuming if there's an organization listening, so, hey, we want to, like, we're a not-for-profit, we're a new Canadians group, anything like that, they just reach out, like stampeders.com. You guys aren't hard to find. It's easy from that place.
no, exactly.
Yeah. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, do you have hit me up on LinkedIn? Like, do you have a preferred? Because there's a million ways to get a hold of people these days. What's your preference?
Probably the easiest way is through email. That's
Okay.
it's good. Yeah, letter J McNeil at stampeders.com.
Amazing. I love when people throw out their email like that. Yeah. They're
Yep.
just reach out. It's the hardest thing is, and I find if people like, oh, what if I'm going to reach out to these people. I'm like 90% of the time people in Calgary just like, oh, even if they can't help you, they'll refer you to someone who can. That small town thing is alive and well here. I think it's one of our superpowers.
I definitely agree. Yeah, no, it's really interesting too. Is I love when our fans who are passionate. We have very, very passionate fans, and even though maybe they gave up their season tickets, they remain very passionate Stampeder fans,
That's a good point. Yeah.
and they will take the time to share their thoughts. And so, to give an example, I received a letter, like it was a handwritten letter, a 2-page letter from a gentleman who was a season ticket holder, and he expressed his concerns and asked for if I could address them for him. And what I chuckled because didn't come from an email. I have to send him,
No, he wrote you a letter. That's got weight to it. That's got gravity to it, though, doesn't it?
But he took the time to actually do that, So so I'm crafting my response right now to him. So it's kind of neat. Like it's not just an email, but he took the time to actually send the letter. So we're gonna do, I'll send it back to him here at the end of the week.
I love it.
Pretty
Kudos,
awesome.
no, kudos for you. Kudos for him for caring enough. And there was probably some feisty bits in that. If it's a 2-pager, there was probably some parts. He wasn't just sending you praise and validation, I'm guessing, but you took it seriously. You listened and you responded. Like I do appreciate it. A 2-page letter has some weight to it for sure.
It definitely does.
Sir, I appreciate your concerns. Let me respond in kind. I love it. Jay, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being the guest on episode 400. I love this thing that I started to connect with my community has got proper carried away with itself, but I get to meet amazing, cool people like you. So I don't know. I don't know about 400 more, but there's going to be a few more. I can't stop now. It's just the more people you meet in the city, the more you realize how much crossover and how much support and how much sense of community there actually is in Calgary. And I will fly that flag all day long.
Well, no, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. I can't believe it flew by.
It's a good sign. It's a good sign.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving the opportunity to tell the Stampeder story, because I think it's an important one that people need to hear.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm happy to put it out to the world. And I look forward to chatting again. I'll put that. I do love having the, okay, it's a year later. What's happened? What's going on? So yeah. I have a feeling that this is the start. So I look forward to episode number 2. I'll be bold to say that.
I can't wait for it too.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.